Urgent. Your soulmate discovered what the third party did. Open this now. Don't scroll, because your soulmate has just discovered something about the third party that changes the entire story they thought they understood. My beloved child, your heart needs this right now because there was a reason the connection between you suddenly became confusing, and your soulmate is beginning to realize that not everything they believed came directly from you. For a long time, they thought they were reacting to facts. They thought they understood why things changed, why distance appeared, why certain conversations became colder, and why doubt entered a connection that once felt natural. But listen to this carefully, something has surfaced. A contradiction. A conversation. A hidden detail. Something small at first, but powerful enough to make your soulmate stop and ask, wait, if this part wasn't true, then what else did I believe without checking? And once that question entered their mind, everything started unraveling. Wait, because the third party may have appeared trustworthy from the beginning. They may have acted concerned. They may have said they were only protecting your soulmate from disappointment. Maybe they told them, I'm saying this because I care about you, or, you need to know what this person is really like. My beloved child, that is why the interference worked. It did not arrive looking like interference. It arrived looking like advice. Don't scroll, because your soulmate already had fears around love, vulnerability, or betrayal, and this third party knew exactly which doubts would be easiest to activate. They may not have needed to invent an entire story. All they had to do was take one thing out of context, leave out one important detail, or repeat something in a way that made your intentions look completely different. Listen closely, because your soulmate has started comparing what the third party said with what they personally experienced with you. That comparison is creating serious questions. Maybe they were told you were not genuine, yet they remember how consistently you showed up when they needed someone. Maybe they were told you were playing games, but they remember that you were the one asking for honest communication. Maybe the third party suggested you did not care, yet your soulmate remembers moments when you supported them even when there was nothing in it for you. My beloved child, your heart needs this right now because the story is beginning to fall apart under the weight of your actual behavior. Don't look away, because one detail may have exposed more than the third party intended. Perhaps they repeated the story differently to another person. Maybe they forgot what version they had originally told your soulmate. Maybe someone else casually mentioned something that directly contradicted the timeline. And in one quiet second, your soulmate realized something was wrong. Listen to this. They may not have confronted anyone immediately. They may have stayed calm, but inside their mind they began going backward through every conversation. Every warning. Every suspicious statement. Every moment they allowed doubt to influence how they treated you. Pause here, because your soulmate is not only angry at the third party. Part of them is deeply angry with themselves. My beloved child, they are realizing they should have come to you directly. They should have asked. They should have allowed you to explain yourself instead of making decisions based on someone else's interpretation. This message is for you because they can now see the moments when you tried to open communication and they shut it down. Maybe you asked, "What's wrong?" Maybe you said, "If you heard something, talk to me." Maybe you could feel their energy changing and wanted to know why. Yet instead of telling you what was happening, they kept the doubt inside. Your heart needs this right now, because you may have blamed yourself for that sudden shift. Maybe you thought you became too emotional. Maybe you wondered whether you said something wrong. Perhaps you replayed the last few conversations, trying desperately to locate the mistake. Don't scroll, because what if you could never find it because the real problem was happening in conversations you were not part of? What if your soulmate was responding to information you had never even heard? My beloved child, you cannot defend yourself against a story nobody tells you exists. Listen carefully, because the third party may have had a motive your soulmate did not understand at first. Maybe they feared losing influence. Maybe they were emotionally attached to your soulmate. Maybe they felt threatened by how close the two of you were becoming. Or perhaps they genuinely believed they were helping but allowed jealousy, insecurity, or their own unresolved experiences to distort what they said. Whatever the motive, your soulmate is beginning to ask the question that matters most: why were they so invested in keeping me doubtful about this connection? Don't scroll, because that question is leading them somewhere uncomfortable. Your soulmate remembers how the third party behaved whenever your name came up. Maybe they became unusually negative. Maybe they always had another warning. Maybe they exaggerated small problems. Perhaps every time your soulmate started feeling hopeful about you, this person suddenly had another reason they should be careful. My beloved child, patterns are difficult to see when you are inside them. But once your soulmate steps back, the pattern becomes obvious. Stay with this message, because someone else may now be confirming what your soulmate suspected. Maybe a friend quietly said, "I always thought that person was too involved." Maybe someone admitted they heard a completely different version. Perhaps a person who stayed silent before is finally saying, "There's something you should know." Don't scroll, because once more than one person starts questioning the same story, your soulmate can no longer dismiss the feeling that something was hidden. Listen to this, because your soulmate may have found out that the third party knew something positive about you and deliberately did not share it. Maybe they knew you had tried to reach out. Maybe they knew you had defended your soulmate when someone spoke badly about them. Maybe they knew that a situation presented as suspicious had an innocent explanation. My beloved child, sometimes manipulation happens through omission. The third party may not have told a direct lie. They may have simply withheld the one fact that would have changed how your soulmate understood everything. Wait, because that is the part making your soulmate furious. If the third party truly wanted clarity, why hide information that could have created it? If they truly wanted to protect your soulmate, why discourage direct communication? Don't look away, because these questions are shifting your soulmate's trust. The doubt that used to point toward you is now beginning to point toward the source of the story. Your heart needs this right now, because there may be a reason you kept seeing 222 during this period. Let it remind you of balance and direct partnership. Two people cannot create a healthy connection when a third voice becomes louder than their own communication. If you keep seeing 444, let it remind you that trust needs a foundation. If 555 appears, allow it to represent a necessary change in the old dynamic. And if 111 catches your attention, use it as a moment to ask what new understanding you are ready to accept. My beloved child, signs do not replace facts, but they can remind you to return to clarity. Don't scroll, because your soulmate may be preparing to confront the third party directly. Not with shouting. Not necessarily with anger. They may be doing something even more powerful, asking specific questions. Who told you that? When did this happen? Did you hear it yourself? Why didn't you tell me this part? My beloved child, those kinds of questions can be difficult for someone who has been relying on vagueness. And your soulmate is noticing how quickly the third party's confidence changes once details are required. Listen closely, because the third party may now be trying to rewrite their role. Maybe they say, "I never told you to stop talking to them." Maybe they claim your soulmate misunderstood. Perhaps they say, "I was only giving my opinion." Don't scroll, because your soulmate remembers the tone, the timing, and how repeated the warnings were. They are beginning to recognize the difference between occasional advice and a sustained effort to influence how someone sees another person. Pause here, because your soulmate may suddenly remember something you said that sounded small at the time. Maybe you told them, "If you ever hear something about me, ask me directly." Maybe you said, "Don't let someone outside this connection tell you what's happening inside it." My beloved child, those words may be returning now with a completely different meaning. What they once dismissed as defensiveness may now sound like wisdom. Your heart needs this right now, because their realization does not erase what happened to you. Even if the third party influenced them, your soulmate still made choices. They still chose silence. They still allowed someone else's words to become stronger than their trust in you. My beloved child, if healing ever happens, accountability will matter. They cannot simply come back saying, "It was all someone else's fault." They must be able to say, "I should have come to you. I should have listened. I should have given you the chance to speak for yourself." Don't look away, because your soulmate knows that now. They may be practicing an apology before they ever contact you. Maybe inside their mind they are saying, "I'm sorry I made you feel like I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I let another person create distance between us. I'm sorry I believed something without asking you." Listen to this. They are beginning to understand that exposing the third party is only half of the truth. The other half is taking responsibility for how they responded. Stay with this message, because one discovery may be hurting them more than everything else. They may have learned that you tried to communicate during the exact time they were pulling away, but the third party minimized it or framed it differently. Perhaps you sent something sincere and your soulmate was told you were manipulating them. Maybe you asked for a conversation and someone convinced them that responding would give you power. My beloved child, if your soulmate discovers that, they may finally understand how many opportunities were lost because someone else was interpreting your intentions for them. Listen carefully, because your soulmate is now imagining how the situation felt from your perspective. They are thinking about you watching them become distant without explanation. They are imagining how many questions you carried. Maybe you wondered why something that felt emotionally strong suddenly became cold. Maybe you thought there was another person. Maybe you assumed they stopped loving you. Don't scroll, because your soulmate is beginning to realize that their silence allowed you to believe the worst possible explanation. Your heart needs this right now, because you were not weak for wanting answers. You were not too much, because you wanted clarity. My beloved child, healthy connection requires communication. If someone outside the relationship can completely change how one person sees the other without a direct conversation, the foundation was not strong enough yet. That is the lesson your soulmate is learning now. Don't scroll, because there may be one message, screenshot, or private conversation that is becoming the key to everything. Maybe someone finally showed your soulmate what was actually said. Maybe they saw a full conversation after previously hearing only one sentence. Perhaps they discovered that something attributed to you was never said the way the third party claimed. My beloved child, the moment they saw the complete context, something inside them dropped. They realized they had made emotional decisions using incomplete information. Wait, because the first feeling may not have been anger. It may have been grief. Listen to this. Your soulmate may have thought, how different would things be if I had known this then? They started thinking about the time lost. The conversations that never happened. The closeness that disappeared. The possibility that you spent months believing they rejected you when in reality they were reacting to a distorted version of events. Your heart needs this right now, because regret can become a powerful teacher, but only if it leads to change. My beloved child, your soulmate cannot undo what happened. They cannot return to every moment and answer differently. What they can do is decide that nobody else will ever again have this much control over how they communicate with someone they love. That is where awakening becomes action. Don't look away, because the third party may realize they are losing control of the narrative. They might suddenly become more emotional. Maybe they accuse your soulmate of taking your side. Maybe they say, you're going to regret trusting them. Perhaps they try to introduce another story just as the first one begins collapsing. Listen closely. Your soulmate is noticing this behavior differently now. What once sounded protective may now sound like desperation. Stay with this message, because your soulmate is beginning to establish boundaries. They may be saying, stop speaking for them. If I want to know something, I'll ask them. I don't want to hear rumors anymore. My beloved child, this is significant. They are learning that relationships need protection not only from betrayal but also from excessive outside influence. Listen to this, because the third party may become especially upset when your soulmate says one sentence, I know them better than you do. Don't scroll, because that sentence marks a major shift. Your soulmate is returning to their direct experience of you instead of letting another person define you. They remember your character, your kindness, your imperfections too, because this is not about placing you on a pedestal. It is about understanding that your actual behavior deserves more weight than somebody else's story. Your heart needs this right now, because the universe may be teaching you something too. You do not need to run back simply because your name is cleared. My beloved child, if your soulmate approaches you, let them explain. Let them listen. But let their future behavior prove whether the lesson truly changed them. If they are still easily influenced, the same pattern could repeat with a different person. Real growth means learning how to communicate directly when doubt returns. Don't scroll, because something even bigger may be happening. Your soulmate may now want to correct what they said about you to other people. Perhaps family or friends formed opinions based on the third party's version. Your soulmate is realizing that if they participated in spreading or accepting an unfair narrative, they have a responsibility to correct it. Listen to this. They may be going back to people and saying, "I didn't have the full story." Pause here, because that requires humility. Admitting you were wrong in private is difficult. Admitting it to people who watched you make a decision is even harder. My beloved child, your soulmate is being asked to choose between protecting their pride and protecting the truth. And for the first time, truth may be becoming more important. Your heart needs this right now, because this revelation is not about revenge on the third party. You do not need to hope for their humiliation. Maybe they acted from jealousy. Maybe from insecurity. Maybe from genuine but misguided concern. Whatever happened, their actions can be exposed without you becoming consumed by anger. My beloved child, protecting your peace is still part of your spiritual awakening. Don't look away, because there may be another person who knows exactly why the third party interfered. Someone witnessed the beginning. Someone remembers what this person said before you and your soulmate ever started experiencing serious distance. Maybe that person heard the third party admit they did not want your connection becoming too serious. And now your soulmate is searching for answers. Listen carefully, because if this witness speaks, the motive could finally become clear. Maybe the third party feared being replaced. Maybe they had feelings they never admitted. Perhaps they enjoyed being the person your soulmate always relied on and saw you as a threat to that closeness. My beloved child, whatever the reason, your soulmate wants facts now, not assumptions. Stay with this message, because your soulmate may be preparing one conversation with you that feels more frightening than confronting the third party. They know they can expose what someone else did, but then they have to stand before you and admit what they themselves did with that information. Don't scroll, because that is where real courage begins. They may have to tell you exactly what they believed, exactly why they became distant, and exactly when they discovered they had been wrong. Your heart needs this right now, because you are allowed to have an emotional response if that day comes. Maybe relief, anger, sadness, even disbelief. My beloved child, all of those can exist together. Understanding the reason does not automatically erase the wound. Give yourself permission to process truth at your own pace. Listen to this, because your soulmate may also have to answer one painful question from you: why didn't you trust me enough to ask? That question may be the hardest one. Don't look away. They cannot blame the third party for that completely. They may have to admit that their own fear made the story believable. Maybe they were already scared of being hurt. Maybe they expected betrayal because of old wounds. The third party simply gave those fears a direction. Pause here, because this could become the deepest part of their spiritual awakening. Your soulmate is realizing that healing means not allowing old wounds to decide who new people are. If someone betrayed them before, you are not automatically that person. If someone lied before, you should not have to prove your innocence against every future suspicion. My beloved child, your soulmate may finally understand how much their past influenced the way they treated your connection. Don't scroll, because the shocking secret is getting closer to full exposure. Your soulmate now suspects that the third party hid one final fact deliberately, a fact that could have cleared up the misunderstanding almost immediately. Maybe they knew you were telling the truth. Maybe they knew there was another explanation. Maybe they knew you had tried to contact your soulmate. And for some reason, they chose silence. Listen closely, because your soulmate wants to know why. That why is becoming more important than everything else. Why hide it? Why keep the confusion alive? Why continue encouraging distance even after it became obvious that both of you were hurting? My beloved child, something about the answer may reveal that this was never just about protecting your soulmate. Your heart needs this right now, because there is still more your soulmate has not discovered. One more conversation took place behind their back. One more person knows what the third party was really trying to accomplish. And that person may finally be ready to speak. Don't scroll, because your soulmate has now reached the part of this discovery that they cannot explain away anymore. My beloved child, what began as a small suspicion has turned into a chain of details that all seem to point in the same direction. The third party may have known much more about your feelings than they ever admitted, and your soulmate is beginning to understand that this was not simply a case of bad advice or an innocent misunderstanding. Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. Somewhere along the way, this person became aware that your feelings were genuine. They may have known that you still cared. They may have known that you were willing to talk. They may even have known that you were confused about why your soulmate suddenly pulled away. Yet instead of helping both of you communicate, they allowed the distance to continue. That is the part your soulmate cannot stop thinking about. Why would someone who claimed to care about them allow a misunderstanding to grow when they had information that could have helped resolve it? Wait, because one conversation may have exposed exactly how much the third party knew. Your soulmate may have discovered that this person had spoken with someone who understood your side of the situation. Maybe they heard that you never intended to hurt your soulmate. Maybe they knew a certain rumor had been taken out of context. Perhaps they learned that you had actually tried to clear things up. My beloved child, don't look away, because your soulmate is starting to piece together a timeline now. They are asking when the third party learned these things, what they said afterward, and why their advice did not change once they knew more. The dates matter. The order of events matters. And the deeper your soulmate looks, the harder it becomes to believe that every omission was accidental. Listen closely, because your soulmate may now remember something the third party said that sounded harmless at the time. Maybe it was, don't contact them yet, or, give it some time, or even, if they really care, they'll come to you. My beloved child, those words may have sounded reasonable while emotions were high. But now your soulmate is wondering whether those suggestions were designed to keep both of you waiting for the other person to make the first move. Don't scroll, because that creates a painful possibility. Both of you may have been waiting while a third person benefited from keeping communication frozen. Your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate is beginning to feel the weight of every opportunity that may have been lost during that silence. There were days when one honest conversation could have prevented weeks of confusion. Maybe you were ready to speak, but believed they did not want to hear you. Maybe your soulmate wanted to reach out, but was told it would be a mistake. My beloved child, imagine two people carrying unresolved feelings while each assumes the other has already moved on. That is what your soulmate is starting to see now, and it hurts because they understand how easily direct communication could have changed everything. Don't look away, because the third party may be trying to defend themselves by saying they were only giving advice. But your soulmate is asking a different question now. Why was the advice always leading me away from them? Listen to this. Healthy advice usually encourages clarity. It might say, ask them. Hear their side. Take your time, but communicate. Yet your soulmate is noticing that the third party's guidance repeatedly pushed toward suspicion, distance, and silence. My beloved child, patterns reveal intention more clearly than one isolated statement, and that pattern is becoming difficult to ignore. Pause here, because 222 may feel symbolic in this chapter for a reason. Two people need direct communication if trust is going to exist. My beloved child, if you keep seeing 222, let it remind you that no third voice should become more powerful than the people actually involved. If 444 appears, think about rebuilding trust on something stable. If 555 keeps showing up, let it remind you that old dynamics sometimes have to break before healthier ones can begin. And if 111 catches your attention, use that moment to ask what new truth you are willing to accept without losing your peace. Listen carefully, because someone around your soulmate may have finally said what nobody else wanted to say. I think that person was trying to keep you two apart. That sentence may have landed heavily. Your soulmate may have rejected it at first because accepting it meant admitting they had been influenced. But don't scroll, because once the idea entered their mind, they started revisiting everything. Who became uncomfortable when you and your soulmate were doing well? Who always seemed to have something negative to say after moments of closeness? Who gained more influence whenever your soulmate became confused about you? My beloved child, the answers are beginning to create a pattern your soulmate cannot unsee. Wait, because one person may now be willing to confirm the third party's real motive. Maybe they heard this person admit jealousy. Maybe they remember a private comment like, "They're getting too close," or, "Things are going to change if those two become serious." Listen to this. Your soulmate may not have known that their relationship with you was affecting someone else emotionally. The third party may have feared losing attention, control, friendship, or some place of importance in your soulmate's life. My beloved child, that does not excuse what they did, but it may finally explain why their behavior intensified as your connection deepened. Your heart needs this right now, because this discovery may be creating mixed emotions inside your soulmate. Anger at the third party. Regret toward you. Shame about their own choices. And underneath all of it, grief over time that cannot be recovered. Don't scroll. They may be thinking, what if I had trusted my own experience instead? What if I had asked them directly? What if I had not let someone else's fear become my decision? These questions are not easy, but they are forcing your soulmate to become more honest than they have been in a long time. Stay with this message, because the most important thing is that your soulmate is no longer trying to avoid their own responsibility. My beloved child, they are beginning to understand that being misled does not erase the fact that they chose silence. They could have asked you. They could have checked the facts. They could have trusted the history they had with you enough to at least hear your side. Listen to this carefully. Real awakening begins when someone can say, "Yes, another person influenced me, but I still made the choice." That is where accountability begins. Don't scroll, because there is one apology forming inside them that carries more weight than anything they have rehearsed before. It is not simply, "I'm sorry I believed them." It is, "I'm sorry I trusted someone else's version of you more than I trusted the person you had consistently shown me you were." My beloved child, that is a painful admission. Your soulmate remembers your patience. They remember the times you were emotionally present. They remember that your actions often contradicted the negative story. And now they are wondering why fear made them ignore what was right in front of them. Listen closely, because the third party may have known exactly which old wound to activate. Maybe your soulmate had been betrayed before. Maybe someone lied to them in the past. Maybe they had a deep fear of being made a fool of in love. My beloved child, if the third party understood that fear, they did not need much evidence to create doubt. They only had to say something that sounded similar to what happened before. Don't look away, because your soulmate is beginning to realize that they did not judge you as a completely new person. They judged you through the lens of an old wound. Your heart needs this right now, because that realization can finally free you from a burden you may have been carrying. Maybe you tried harder and harder to prove you were trustworthy, not realizing you were being compared to someone from your soulmate's past. Maybe no amount of reassurance seemed enough. My beloved child, you cannot compete with a wound someone refuses to heal. You cannot prove your innocence against every fear another person carries. Your soulmate is finally beginning to understand that they must heal the part of themselves that made manipulation so easy. Don't scroll, because the third party may now be afraid of you and your soulmate having one direct conversation. That is one of the strongest signs that something was being controlled through separation. Maybe this person suddenly says, "There's no point talking to them." Maybe they warn your soulmate that you will manipulate the story. Maybe they become unusually upset when your soulmate mentions wanting to hear you out. Listen to this. Why fear communication unless communication threatens the narrative? Wait, because your soulmate is noticing that too. Instead of backing away, their curiosity is becoming determination. They want to hear your voice. They want to ask what you actually knew, what you were told, and what you experienced during the same period. My beloved child, they are beginning to understand that the only way to compare stories honestly is to stop relying on messengers. And that decision may be exactly what the third party tried hardest to prevent. Pause here, because your soulmate may soon discover that you were never told some of the things they assumed you knew. Perhaps they believed you understood why they were distant. Maybe they thought you knew what rumor was circulating. Maybe they assumed your silence meant you did not care enough to explain yourself. Don't scroll, because once they speak to you directly, they may realize you were operating with an entirely different set of information. That could completely change how both of you remember the past. Listen carefully, because one of the most emotional moments may come when your soulmate realizes you were hurt by a decision you did not even understand. They may remember how you looked, how your tone changed, or how you eventually stopped reaching. My beloved child, what they once interpreted as guilt or indifference may now look like heartbreak. That shift in perspective can be powerful. They are beginning to see your silence not as proof that the third party was right, but as the reaction of someone who had finally become exhausted by confusion. Your heart needs this right now, because understanding the full story does not mean you have to immediately open the door again. My beloved child, this is important. You can hear their explanation and still need time. You can understand how they were influenced and still say, "You should have come to me." You can forgive and still expect them to demonstrate stronger boundaries in the future. Don't scroll past this. Clearing your name does not automatically rebuild trust. Stay with this message, because your soulmate knows they may have to prove that this lesson changed them. Maybe they are already putting distance between themselves and the third party. Maybe they are becoming more careful about what personal details they share with outside people. Perhaps they are learning that not every person deserves influence over intimate decisions. My beloved child, that change matters more than dramatic anger. If they learned nothing except this particular person lied, the same pattern could happen again with someone else. Real growth means learning to trust direct communication. Don't look away, because the third party may be trying a final tactic, making your soulmate feel guilty for questioning them. Maybe they say, "After everything I've done for you, you're choosing them." Maybe they accuse your soulmate of betrayal. Listen to this carefully. Your soulmate is beginning to recognize emotional pressure for what it is. Asking for facts is not betrayal. Wanting to hear both sides is not disloyalty. My beloved child, they are learning that loyalty should never require surrendering their own judgment. Wait, because this may be the moment when your soulmate finally says, "This is between me and them." That one sentence can change everything. It establishes a boundary that should have existed from the beginning. It does not mean nobody can ever offer advice. It means the final truth about a relationship must come from the people living inside it. Don't scroll, because your soulmate is finally taking back authority over their own emotional life. Your heart needs this right now, because you may soon hear about things that were said about you that make you angry. My beloved child, protect yourself from becoming consumed by the need to answer every accusation. Focus on the pieces that actually matter. What did your soulmate believe? What influenced their choices? What needs clarification? The goal is not to win a courtroom battle against every person who ever misunderstood you. The goal is to determine whether enough truth and maturity exist for you to make a healthy decision about the future. Listen closely, because there may be one piece of evidence that changes your soulmate's anger into complete disbelief. Perhaps the third party had a message from you that they never passed along. Maybe they knew you had asked about your soulmate. Perhaps they were aware that you wanted to clear the misunderstanding and chose not to say anything. My beloved child, if that is what your soulmate discovers, the sense of betrayal may deepen because the interference moved from opinion into withholding something directly relevant. Don't scroll, because your soulmate may start thinking about all the moments that message could have changed. Maybe they spent weeks believing you did not care while the truth was sitting somewhere else. Maybe they made a decision because they thought you had moved on. Maybe they allowed another person closer because they believed the door with you was already closed. Listen to this. One withheld detail can change the emotional meaning of an entire timeline. Pause here, because this is where 555 can symbolize something deeper. The old story can no longer survive unchanged once new information appears. My beloved child, truth may not restore everything exactly as it was. Sometimes truth creates a new path instead. Maybe it leads to reconciliation. Maybe closure. Maybe a deeper understanding without reunion. The important thing is that choices are finally being made from fuller information rather than fear. Your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate may be preparing to tell you everything without asking you to decide anything immediately. That is a sign of maturity. Maybe they want to say, "You deserve to know what happened, even if you decide you don't want me back." Don't scroll, because that mindset is different from someone who exposes the third party only to pressure you into reconciliation. Respecting your response means accepting that truth is something you were owed, not something they can use as leverage. Listen carefully, because another person may have now stepped forward and admitted they suspected the third party from the beginning. Your soulmate may feel frustrated and ask, "Why didn't you tell me?" And that person may say, "I tried, but you weren't ready to hear it." My beloved child, that answer could expose another painful truth. Sometimes fear makes people defend the very story that is hurting them. Your soulmate may have ignored warnings because accepting them would have required them to question someone they trusted. Don't look away, because your soulmate is learning to question without becoming paranoid. This matters. Discovering one person may have interfered does not mean everyone is against them. My beloved child, real discernment is calm. It asks for evidence. It communicates directly. It does not turn every friend into an enemy. If your soulmate is truly growing, they will learn not only to set boundaries but also to avoid replacing blind trust with blind suspicion. Stay with this message, because the deepest lesson may be about courage. Your soulmate could have avoided much of this by having one uncomfortable conversation with you earlier. Fear made that conversation feel impossible. Now they understand that avoiding discomfort can create far greater pain later. Don't scroll, because they may finally be ready to choose short-term vulnerability over long-term regret. Your heart needs this right now, because you have learned the same lesson in a different way. You have learned that you cannot keep waiting for someone to read your heart from a distance. You deserve direct communication. You deserve someone who asks rather than assumes. You deserve a connection where problems are brought into the light before outsiders have time to define them. My beloved child, that standard is part of your spiritual awakening. Listen to this, because your soulmate may soon come toward you with a question that sounds simple but carries months of hidden confusion. Can you tell me what really happened from your side? That may be the beginning of the conversation the third party never wanted to happen. And if you choose to answer, the truth from both sides may line up in ways that shock your soulmate. Don't scroll, because there is still one final secret behind all of this. Your soulmate is beginning to suspect that the third party did not simply want distance between the two of you. They may have been trying to create an opportunity for someone else, or perhaps for themselves, to become more important while your connection was weakened. My beloved child, that possibility is changing the investigation completely. Listen closely to this final revelation, because someone may soon reveal what the third party said immediately after convincing your soulmate to pull away. Those words could expose the motive more clearly than anything discovered so far. They may reveal that the third party already expected your soulmate to become emotionally dependent on them, closer to someone else, or convinced that you were no longer an option. And once your soulmate hears what was said behind their back, they may finally understand why this person fought so hard to prevent direct communication between you. My beloved child, The next truth may prove that the distance was never the final goal, it was only the first step in a plan that depended on your soulmate believing you had already walked away.